And now, live and uncensored, broadcasting from the great state of Texas, worldwide, it's David Knight.
Welcome back. We're going to get back to transportation as everybody is traveling this weekend. Many people traveling today, probably even more traveling on Sunday. This is something that has really become part of our heritage of freedom here in America. One of the things that we celebrate here, one of the freedoms that we celebrate here is the ability to move, the ability to go where we want, when we want, to do so anonymously, to do so privately, to do so in the manner in which we choose. If we want to not spend a great deal of money on a car, we can go out and get a beater car, drive that during the winter or whatever, or just drive a very simple used car that we can get. Or some people want to spend a great deal of money on the car. That's their prerogative. And Americans like to be able to not have to wait on public transportation. But the government doesn't like that. The government has always sought to put us in a box, literally. I've recounted before the time when I went to a city council meeting back in Raleigh. And one of the city councilors had just gotten back from Russia. And she was so excited. This was shortly after the Soviet Union had fallen. She was so excited. She said, I could go anywhere in Moscow for 50 cents. We need to have that here in Raleigh. I mean, it's not a big metropolis. And it's like, you have no idea what the true cost. That was the price of travel. What was the true cost to the people of Moscow? Well, it cost them everything. It cost them their freedom. It cost them the money that was spent on this government system. But what she saw was the ability to control your movement, to make you dependent upon them, because you have to go to the government in order to be able to move through the area. You're not independent of the government. They hate it when you're not independent of them. They want you to be dependent on them for everything. They want you to be dependent on them for education. They want you to be dependent on them for housing, even for food, and for transportation. This is an act of war, folks. And I'm going to tell you in the next segment that this is about more than just your freedom as a traveler. This is something that is going to take down our economy, even more so than the outsourcing of jobs to foreign countries or the importing of cheap foreign labor into this country with open borders, which is what the Republicans want out of the open borders. The Democrats want voters. The Republicans want the Republicans who are running the uni-party leg of the establishment. They want cheap labor. And so that's why the two of them in the uni-party are giving us open borders. So we're going to talk about that in a moment. It was on Monday night that we saw Elizabeth Warren go on Stephen Colbert's show, The Late Show on CBS. And she said that President Trump, by calling her Pocahontas, was using a racist slur. And it will not silence her. She will not be silenced. Just like Shia LaBeouf, she will not be silenced. She's going to be out there. Pocahontas, I think she doesn't realize, as we do, what Donald Trump is really saying about her. Pocahontas is really what we're laughing at. The fact that she would use this to try to appeal to people to vote for her. This is the identity politics. She can't just be Elizabeth Warren. She has to be Elizabeth Warren, also an Indian. Vote for me. And people are laughing at you, Elizabeth Warren. We don't know that you're just a kind of a bossy school marm, but the fact that you're out there trying to be an Indian is what everybody is laughing about. I don't know. I think people need to understand in Massachusetts that they've got a really good independent candidate there. And Shiva Ayyadurai is somebody who is very wise, very intelligent, very freedom-oriented, someone who is a very intelligent entrepreneur. That's the guy they should be supporting, not Elizabeth Warren. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm David Knight. I hope you are having a good time, a safe trip if you're traveling. I hope that you're able to find some way to get where you want to go without going through the airport and being harassed by the people there. That's why I'm not going anywhere this Thanksgiving, because I now hate to fly. I despise it with a passion. I only fly when I absolutely must because it is a business trip. I really despise it. It ruins any vacation that I have. What happens at the beginning and the end of it leaves such a bad taste in my mouth. And so I thought I would play for you this clip from American Carol, the people who did some great parody movies. And it was loved by conservatives. It was hated by liberals because it was very politically incorrect. It was something that came out in July, the year that it came out. And it was the same year that, what was that? What year was it? 2007. The same year that they, that they came out with that. And this was well before you had the underwear bomber. But they knew it was coming. It was part of their over-the-top satire. They knew there was an underwear bomber coming, and they showed the denigration that Americans are being subjected to. And it was done, it came out in July because it was part of the 4th of July. And it was like a Christmas carol. So it's appropriate to think about it this time of year. The individual, who is Michael Moore character, is visited by the ghosts of America's past. So he gets visits by George Washington and others who lecture Michael Moore on our legacy of freedom. That's why the liberals hated it so much. But it's a great film, really a great film. It's very funny, really lampoons the left. And in this particular spot here that we're going to play for you, it's kind of Rosie O'Donnell character and a Michael Moore character talking about all of these radical Christians who are terrorists, and imagining priests who are jumping into the cockpit and hijacking it and stabbing people with their crosses, the pilots with their crosses, or the nuns who jump on a bus and shout, "Hail Mary, full of grace," before they blow themselves up. That's the way the left imagines Christians, okay? Totally projecting onto us the issues of Islamic terror. And then showing the results of this, saying that because of these radical Christians, we have to put you through this kind of airport security. So as you're traveling on this holiday weekend, whether you're traveling today or tomorrow, or you're returning on Sunday, whatever, I want you to keep this in mind. So let's play this clip. And I think even if you're listening on the radio, you'll be able to catch much of what's on this. It's American Carol and the fantasies of the left.
Roll it.
The civilized world braces itself for an onslaught of death and destruction brought on by radical Christians as they attempt
These
to
are
spread
priests
their ideology through terror
spraying
throughout
the
world.
camera so they can't see them. Now they break into the airplane cockpit and they're attacking the pilots with crosses and Bibles.
Jesus!
Hail Mary, full of grace!
Look out! It's those Christians!
The nun blows herself up in the bus.
We all pay the price for the increased security needs caused by the actions of radical Christians.
But I hate having to take these off every single time.
Yeah, ever since that Christian hid explosives in the bottom of his shoes.
Sorry, you can't take this on the plane. I'll have to confiscate
A
this.
tube of toothpaste?
Yep, no liquids ever since the Christian bombed that plane with smuggled nitroglycerin. And I'm gonna take
This was parody 10 years ago.
Please remove all articles of underclothing.
Oh, brother.
Ever since the underwear bomber.
The radical Christian underwear
This was
bomber.
before the underwear bomber. The radical Christian underwear bomber, they said.
Damn those Christians.
Yipes! My God!
Ma'am, if you had extra bleach, you might have a shot of getting those stains out.
Hey!
Ma'am, have you considered a change in diet?
What?
Honey, wouldn't hurt.
Ever since the suppository bomber.
The Episcopal suppository bomber.
The Episcopal suppository bomber. So yeah, they have to get rectal exams because the Episcopal suppository bomber. And so we look at this and we're there now, aren't we? Pretty much. Except it's not Episcopal bombers. It's not nuns blowing themselves up on buses. But we are getting this done to us at the airports. And we played that a couple of weeks ago when we had Kurt Haskell, the guy who was on the plane with the underwear bomber, well after that movie was made. And he pointed out how it was a false flag, how it was a setup so they could get Michael Chertoff's machines that had already been manufactured in quantity into the airport right away on that Christmas holiday. And of course, we had, after they put that in, we had an opt-out campaign that we started here at Infowars. And what did they do? And that was, 2012, I think, or 11. It was the first Thanksgiving after the underwear bomber. It was before I got to Infowars. They did an opt-out campaign. And what did the TSA do with that when people said, we're just going to opt out, you're going to have to pat us down? They just opened up the lines. On the busiest travel day of the year, on Thanksgiving, holidays, they just opened up the lines and let everybody go through because they know it's not any problem. We're not under a threat here. And I say to you that we're not under a threat because of the documents that we've seen from them, because they opened things up on Thanksgiving holiday, and because they have admitted that it is 80, 90% or more. We can't get the exact figures from them because they don't want us to know. They have failed to detect on their own internal audits when they're trying to smuggle something through to see if the TSA people can intercept it. They fail 80 to 90% of the time or more to detect that. What does that tell you? When they say, well, we're going to have to tighten up the schedules here because, we got to be right 100% of the time. Well, what does it tell you if they're wrong 100% of the time? It tells you that there is no threat. The same as they said in their documents that they accidentally posted up unredacted for a short period of time. And we got a shot of those on Infowars. And you can go back and look at our archives if you want to see what that looked like. So that's what's happening to you as you travel. Meanwhile, as I said before, in Las Vegas, they want to make sure that they're talking about having a ban on private cars between the Stratosphere all the way to Mandalay Bay. Because they don't want you to drive there. What is it going to do to our economy? We see a lot of different pushes for this. They're saying, well, we got to do it for safety and security in Las Vegas. Because we had these cars that got in the way of the emergency vehicles, and that won't happen with these driverless cars. Oh, yeah, the driverless car that even though you had a slow-moving truck backing up, it couldn't avoid that accident. What do you think they're going to do when ambulances are flying down the street unexpectedly? What do you think those driverless cars are going to do? Do you think the Uber drivers or the buses are going to be much better? No. And then we got USA Today pushing the idea that driverless cars can transform our lives. Yes, they will. Probably not in ways that you want it. They can transform our lives, and they write this long story about how in retirement communities they can help the elderly, people who are handicapped, who can't drive. Yeah, they're going to make us all handicapped. They're going to make us all immobilized. This is going to be like Kurt Vonnegut's story, Harrison Bergeron, where they take everybody, handicap everybody physically, put shackles on ballet dancers so that they can't perform better than anybody else. Now, this is an enslavement tactic. And then the LA Times talks about, this driverless revolution, it's going to have a big political price. It's going to have a political price because it's going to cost us a massive amount of jobs. They say when they showed a robotic truck going driverless down Interstate 25 in Colorado, said not everybody at the hearing was happy about that. They had the guy who was the Secretary-Treasurer of the Teamsters, whose nearly 600,000 unionized drivers played no small part in President Trump's victory last year. They weren't too happy about that because they understand that there are going to be a lot of people, maybe 50% or more of the transportation industry, which is a big chunk of our economy, is going to lose their jobs if this is to happen. What is the effect of this? As I said before, it's going to be far worse than outsourcing jobs to foreign countries or bringing in cheap foreign workers. This is going to be a concentration of wealth and power into the hands of a few people who are going to own this infrastructure. They're the ones who are pushing it through. And as we've had one over-the-top safety regulation after the other, we'll talk about this when we come back. We're going to take a look at what they're doing with it. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. I'm David Knight. I want to finish up on the real cost of the driverless revolution. There's a lot of costs involved here that are not being talked about. And finally, the LA Times is actually talking about it. Eventually, we're all going to be looking at it. It might be better if we don't look at what happened in the rearview mirror. If maybe we look forward to see where these driverless cars are taking us, because it is a train wreck for our economy as well as for our freedom. And so we need to not be fooled as to what the true costs of this are. And then I'm going to get into the latest on the sexual assaults, because every day it is now somebody else. And as I reported yesterday, the true hypocrisy of what we're seeing from our political leaders, because you want to talk about sexual assault that's based upon power politics. Well, it's not going to be in the office, but it's going to be in the real politicians' offices, which is where this is really going to happen. And there's been some updates to that as well today. We're going to take a look at what's going on with it. Real quickly, I'll remind you of some of the specials that we have added to our Black Friday through Cyber Monday specials. We've added a couple of new items. We've got a lot of items that are 50% off plus free shipping. And you can see those at InfoWarsStore.com. We've added 2 today on Wednesday, the 22nd. Super Male Vitality has now joined the items on sale, 50% off plus free shipping. Also, Living Defense, now 50% off plus free shipping. And you can also find Brain Force, 50% off, free shipping. Knockout, our all-natural sleep aid, 50% off plus free shipping. Silver Bullet, our colloidal silver product, is 67% off and free shipping. And all ProPure products are 25% off and free shipping. That can save you a lot of money if you get some of the bigger water filters like we have at my house. We've got the biggest one for the entire family. And that can save you a great deal of money, 25% off of ProPure items plus free shipping. All right, I was just talking about the cost to jobs. As the LA Times points out in its race to embrace driverless vehicles, Washington has cleared away regulatory hurdles. Who is it that's clearing away the regulatory hurdles? Well, that would be Mitch McConnell's wife. Isn't that convenient? All of the usual GOP establishment figures who are always there for big business, always taking away jobs from the little man, whether it is the foreign visa program to bring in cheap labor, to take away jobs from people in the technical field, or to take away people in the service industry, as we saw happen in Disney World. As a matter of fact, I got an article here from Breitbart. Foreign nationals outnumber Americans in high-paying, white-collar Silicon Valley jobs. Well, thank you. Thank you, Washington, for the visas that you put in there, because, you know, we just couldn't have a vibrant economy if we didn't import foreign workers into Silicon Valley. No, actually, it would just mean that the Silicon Valley multi-billionaires wouldn't have as much of a profit. They would still exist. They would just not have as much profit there. And, of course, we've seen the same thing happen with service jobs. Saying, well, we got to replace all these Disney workers, and folks, you're going to have to train your foreign replacement workers, or you won't get any severance pay. That's another part of the visa program that comes in, or the open borders that brings people in for low-paying service jobs that have made our teenagers unemployable because we have so many adults coming in to take the jobs that people used to take as teenagers, as people in high school. You would learn to work in an entry-level job. And now we have American teenagers who are not getting that kind of basic work experience, that kind of basic work ethic that was always there. Getting a job, saving the money, buying a car. Oh, wait a minute. You're not going to be able to buy a car either. That's a part of the problem, okay? They want to make sure that you just stay inside your home. You don't want to go outside and play as a kid because we'll call Child Protective Services on you if you're even playing in your own yard. We want you sitting on the couch, playing a video game or staring at your phone, and if you do anything else, we're going to hammer you down. That's really what's coming. And so what's going to happen to all the truck drivers? Yeah, this isn't Smokey and the Bandit anymore. We're going to end that opportunity for people. They say driverless vehicles threaten to dramatically reduce America's 1.7 million trucking jobs. Those people aren't going to be able to buy what you're selling, your services, your products here in America. And one person who has written a book called Rise of the Robots, Technology and the Threat of a Jobless Future. Yeah, think about that, folks, your jobless future. They're going to put you on universal basic income. You're going to be like the kept people in the Saudi kingdom, where they put them all on welfare. And they're going to keep you dumbed down and pacified with universal basic income, just like they do the people in Saudi Arabia. The royal family is getting incredibly rich, and then they're putting everybody else on a little allowance to keep them quiet. And then if you get to be a threat, they arrest you and steal your money. That's the model for the future. We're the ones who created Saudi Arabia, and they want to bring Saudi Arabia structure here, along with Islam. The whole thing. They want to bring that all here. But this person who wrote this book, Martin Ford, the author of Rise of the Robots, Technology and the Threat of a Jobless Future, says, I don't think anybody there is thinking, that means Washington, I don't think anybody there in Washington is thinking about this seriously. They're still looking at this as futuristic. Oh, so that's why they like to put the iPads in the dashboard and say, look, it's electric. It's totally clean. Not paying any attention as to where the electricity is being generated. They're not internal combustion engines, they're external combustion engines. The external combustion takes place somewhere else where you don't have to see it and know that it exists. And then they use those electric cars as a beard because, oh, look, they're so futuristic, they're so clean. And in it are all kinds of control mechanisms to track you, to tax you every mile that you drive, and to give information to insurance companies who will raise the rates so high that you won't be able to drive. And that'll be a soft way to ban you. They won't just come out and say, well, you're not going to be allowed to drive any cars, period. They'll do that in some places like Vegas and some other cities like New York. But for the most part, they'll just come out. For those of us who don't live in a hellhole like that, what they'll do is they'll say, we're going to just give all this information to the insurance companies, and the insurance companies will raise your rates so high that you won't be able to drive. They'll say, you accelerated too quickly, or you braked too quickly, or you drove too quickly, because they know exactly where you're driving, and they're going to record everything that you did. Or you drive too many miles. So we're going to raise your insurance rate really, really high, and you won't be able to even afford to drive. So that's a soft way of banning people. He says once people start seeing vehicles on the roads and they start seeing jobs disappearing because of those self-driving vehicles, said the author, things will quickly become very different. And then there's the safety aspect of it. You realize, since Ralph Nader, the government has been on a mission from God to make cars totally safe, where nobody can fail or get injured in them. And we have, at the same time that they've been mandating all kinds of efficiency standards, they've been loading these cars up with very heavy safety equipment that makes it more difficult to get those fuel economy standards. And then increasing the price of the cars incredibly. Now the head of Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety says, we're at a time when there's already record recalls of vehicles because of safety defects. Why are we trusting these companies to do the right thing? Good question. Good question. You trust them to make perfectly safe cars when they're getting all kinds of recalls for very simple things, but they don't care, and they're not going to get your informed consent. They're going to experiment on the roads without your informed consent. That's what they're doing. Stay with us. We'll be right back. I'm David Knight. We're going to talk about sexual assault. Welcome back. I'm David Knight. On this Wednesday, November 22nd, we've been talking about travel and the many ways that it's about to change, not for the better, I would add. But I want to move on to something else now. I want to talk about sexual assault. That's been in the news quite a bit. But I want to roll you back a couple of decades to the Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill trial. Yeah, anybody who sat through that trial has to be, I think that affects any of us who experienced that in a different way than people who didn't go through that, the younger people, the millennials who did that. And I just want to review what happened with that. And there's an article, Powerline blog, written by Paul Mirengoff, says how Anita Hill betrayed feminism. Now, if you don't remember this, you remember there was the back and forth between Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas as part of his confirmation as Supreme Court Justice. And I would say Clarence Thomas has been, in my opinion, the best Supreme Court Justice we've had in terms of his decisions. I like him even actually better than Scalia. He never argued for original intent the way that Scalia did. But in terms of the way that he voted, he's actually been more pro-freedom. And it was one of the things that Joe Biden really despised about Clarence Thomas, really hated the fact that Clarence Thomas had written about natural rights. In other words, the fact that we don't get our rights from government. Because if government granted our rights, they would be government-granted privileges. That's the difference between privileges and rights. Rights are something that you have naturally, or as our founders put in the Declaration of Independence, that you are endowed with your creator by. So they come from God. Or if you don't believe in God, they're natural rights that you possess as a human being, your individual dignity. That is the basis of rights. And the government wants to turn that into privileges. And Joe Biden wanted to keep him from becoming a Supreme Court justice because he believed in the principles of the Declaration of Independence. And then they came up with Anita Hill. And everybody was wearing these buttons. I believe Anita. I believe. And I couldn't find an I Believe Clarence button. They weren't making I Believe Clarence buttons because he wasn't deserved to be believed, because he was a guy. And he was a conservative. That was the key thing. You see, he didn't get any points for being black because he was a conservative. And then he lost big points for being a guy when Anita Hill came after him. But here's this this blog here, How Anita Hill Betrayed Feminism. And he says, feminists betrayed feminism by defending Bill Clinton against credible and, in one notorious case, admitted allegations of serious sexual misconduct. Those allegations were made just a few years after the Clarence Thomas Anita Hill controversy had put the issue of sexual harassment front and center in the nation's consciousness. Do you think this is a new thing? Do you think this is something we're just discovering, sexual harassment? No, it was talked about before Clinton became president. It was talked about during the presidency of George H.W. Bush. I don't know exactly the time of the Clarence Thomas Anita Hill thing. It was somewhere between 88 and 92 that they had this discussion. So everybody was talking about sexual harassment, and that was all anybody was talking about, just like right now. And he said feminists, except for those who knew Clarence Thomas personally, nobody who knew him personally believed any of this stuff. They all believed Anita Hill's claims. And he says the heightened consciousness of the problem of sexual harassment that existed following the Thomas Hill hearings subsided, however, after Clinton's presidency. Why? Because Anita Hill, who had accused Clarence Thomas, who had tried to keep him out of the Supreme Court with this he said, she said. Because, again, it was one of these issues where she said he did something and he said she didn't do it, or whatever. I mean, it was just whoever you believed, okay? And he said, I didn't do it. She said, you did do it. So who are you going to believe? It was a back and forth. And so after that, after Bill Clinton becomes president, and after he's accused of all these sexual assaults and violent attacks and rape and so forth, one of the people who defended him was Anita Hill. He said Hill led the feminist charge to defend Bill Clinton, to preserve his presidency. Tim Russert asked Anita Hill about Gloria Steinem. There's another wonderful feminist from the CIA. Defense of President Clinton against the allegations of Paula Jones. Steinem had said, the truth is that even if the allegations are true, the president is not guilty of sexual harassment. He is accused of making a gross, dumb, reckless pass at a supporter during a low point in her life. She pushed him away, she said, and it never happened again. In other words, President Clinton took no for an answer. However, as this guy says, note that he also was exposing himself to Paula Jones. And this is Gloria Steinem, Miss Feminism herself, defending President Clinton, saying, even if these allegations are true, no big deal, because I'm a feminist, and I support President Clinton's politics. And then Anita Hill, when she was given that quote from Gloria Steinem by Tim Russert, said, women should focus on the bigger issues before casting judgment on Clinton for sexual harassment allegations. She said, I think what Ms. Steinem also says that we have to look at is the totality of the presidency and how he has been on women's issues generally. Is he our best bet, notwithstanding some behavior that we might dislike? And I don't think that most women have come to that point where we've said, well, this is so bad that even if he is better on the bigger issues, we can't have him as president. And then Russert asked her if there's not a double standard then for a liberal as opposed to a conservative. Because that obviously is, okay? Tim Russert was a great reporter. She said, well, I think it is a reality that we have to live with. We live in a political world, and the reality is that we want, there's larger issues other than just individual behavior. In other words, larger issues than sexual harassment, larger issues than violent sexual attacks, larger issues than rape. That's what Anita Hill, that's what Gloria Steinem were telling us 25 years ago about the Clarence Thomas issues as they were defending then Bill Clinton. And so have things really changed that much? Especially when we get into a he said, she said. I mean, what's going to happen with that is that you're going to believe the person that you trust politically in most cases, because you can't prove or disprove these charges. But let's take a look at John Conyers, who we do know now has something happening there because there's been some updates to this. Remember, it was just yesterday that BuzzFeed put out the article about John Conyers. And actually, that article came from Mike Cernovich, who's a host here at Infowars. And as the Washington Post points out in their headline, why BuzzFeed teamed up with a far-right figure. No, see, these people would not be, Washington Post, they would never be far left. They wouldn't even identify themselves as left. But if you don't agree with them, if you're a conservative or you're a supporter of Donald Trump, you are a far-right figure. So they identify Cernovich as a far-right figure, a controversial, nevertheless, far-right figure who has promoted blatantly false conspiracy theories, says the Washington Post. But he was a source of a big BuzzFeed scoop Monday night. And why did he do that? Well, he said when he gave them the information, he said, I know that if I put this out, the mainstream media will not report it. And but it's true. And you can vet this. And if you think that it is true after you vet it, then you put it out. And that's exactly what happened. And that's why the story got out, is because Cernovich gave it to BuzzFeed. And that scandal has now rocked the House Democrats with hypocrisy. Just as we saw with Anita Hill and Gloria Steinem, now all of these virtue-signaling feminists out there have to figure out what they're going to do with John Conyers. And he is maintaining yesterday, well, he says, I expressly and vehemently deny the allegations made against me and continue to do so. My office resolved these allegations with an express denial of liability in order to save all involved from the rigors of protracted litigation. So he did a big massive payoff just so they wouldn't have to have this exposed and keep it secret. And yet now we have, and he says, oh, it wasn't true. And now today we find another woman accused John Conyers of sexual harassment in court filings this year. This is not something that happened in the distant past. This is something that is going on right now with John Conyers, the most senior Democrat in the House of Representatives. Will they do anything about it? We'll tell you what these charges are, and we're going to take a look at where the Democrats are on sexual harassment and other sexual charges when we come back. I'm David Knight. Stay with us. Welcome back. I'm David Knight, and we're going to talk about where we are today with sexual harassment, as it's now back in the news after 20-some-odd years. And as I just explained to you in the last segment, Anita Hill betrayed feminism. We're going to talk about what they're going to do now and why they're moving the way they are against certain figures and what the ultimate goal of this is in just a moment. Before we do, real quickly, I want to remind you of the cyber specials that we're running at Infowars, part of our Black Friday through Cyber Monday specials. And we've added 2 new items to our list of deeply discounted products that are also available for free shipping. We've added Super Male Vitality and Living Defense, both of them 50% off, and they join Brain Force Plus and Knockout. Both of those are also 50% off plus free shipping. And we have Silver Bullet for 67% off plus free shipping. And all Pro Pure products, that's all the water filters, even the big ones, are 25% off. That's a big savings there, because the big ones can get to be a couple $100 regular retail price and free shipping. So I'll save you a lot of money if you're in the market for a water filter. If you don't have one, you should be in the market for a water filter, the very minimum that you should do to protect your health and your family's health. Because regardless of whether you're on a well system or whether you're on municipal water, you never know what's in your water. You could be testing it every day, and somebody could put it into the municipal system, or something could get into the well water, and you don't know what you're drinking, and stuff like that is happening all the time. So take a look at the specials that we have at InfoWarsStore.com. We really do appreciate your support, and we're going to have a 34-hour marathon broadcast on Monday, so make sure you join us then. And also, Alex is going to be back live on Friday with his program. We'll have a rebroadcast of Real News on Friday as well as tomorrow. All right, let's talk about what's going on here, because we got another day and another woman coming after John Conyers. And it's exactly the same charges. Isn't it interesting that we see exactly the same motif happening again and again with all these people? They all have an MO, as I've said before. It's a certain way that Bill Cosby comes after women. There's a certain way that we see C.S. Lewis coming after women and so forth. And what do we see from John Conyers? Another former staff member to John Conyers has alleged that she endured persistent sexual harassment. A former scheduler in the Conyers office attempted to file a sealed lawsuit against him this February, this year, in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. She alleged she suffered unwarranted touching by John Conyers repeatedly, quote, repeatedly and daily, unquote. She abandoned the lawsuit the next month after the court denied her motion to seal the complaint. What does that tell you? What does that tell you about the atmosphere in Washington and the fact that we have $17 million that have been paid out to people who have been harassed by congressmen and so forth, people on Capitol Hill, and we're not allowed to know even though we are paying the bill for this? And so she was only going to do this if it could get sealed. Why? Because the other person who did it had to sign an agreement, and her working days were over after she got a payoff of $27,000. The woman was not involved in that 2015 sexual harassment wrongful dismissal complaint that Conyers settled in 2015 that was revealed yesterday, that Mike Cernovich gave to BuzzFeed, and they vetted it, put it out. This lawsuit centered on behavior that took place later, from 2015 to 2016. So even though he came out and he said, I vigorously and vehemently deny these charges, I just did it to get it out of the way, and then he immediately starts doing it again with somebody else. It's exactly the same behavior. These behaviors and actions were so common and pervasive that they created a hostile work environment, she alleged in the lawsuit. Unlike the settlement agreement that was released on Monday, these court filings are public documents, so they were not sealed because she didn't go through with it. She also cited his age and his failing mental capacities in the lawsuit. That recalls, remember we had that article that was kind of strange that Drudge linked to? We had, somebody had the Capitol Pharmacy. It was a small business, and they provided drugs for people on Capitol Hill, like going back into the 1800s. And they were just, it was kind of a special interest story that was being done by the local Washington paper. But there was an interesting little thing that was in there that little passage that they said that Drudge seized upon and made it headlines on the Drudge Report. The guy said, I'm amazed at some of these drugs that are here. We've got some drugs here that for people who have severely impaired mental capacities, and I've got to wonder if they're taking these drugs on a regular basis, if they even know what they're voting on or what they voted on yesterday. Maybe that's the case with John Conyers. He is the oldest, most senior guy there with the Democrats. Everybody at the time was thinking about Nancy Pelosi, but John Conyers. Now, in this lawsuit that happened this age, she cited this year. She cited his age and his failing mental capacities in the suit, saying that she was hired in part to keep track of his whereabouts. This guy sounds like he's got severe Alzheimer's or dementia or something like that. He does not need to be our congressman for a variety of reasons. She had to wake him up every morning. She had to deliver his medication, including on weekends. Wow. And she said that she had to ask a male staffer that she had dated earlier to be her quote-unquote fake boyfriend so that she could stop his advances. So this is a guy that is in such advanced age and failing mental capacities that he needs to have this woman hired as part of his staff to keep track of where he is so he doesn't wander off. She has to go to his place every morning to wake him up and deliver his medication, and she has to have a boyfriend to keep him from sexually assaulting her. But the Democrats don't want to have him step down yet. They are demurring from removing John Conyers from the powerful Judiciary Committee that he is now the minority leader of. Even though all these are sexual harassment allegations, we're seeing exactly the same type of behavior that we saw with Gloria Steinem and Anita Hill defending Bill Clinton at the height of all that. And in spite of his impaired ability, and believe me, these other Democrats in Congress know that his abilities are impaired. They work with him on a daily basis. How could they not know that? How could they not know that he is in such severe incapacity that he has to hire a staffer just to keep track of his whereabouts and deliver him medication and wake him up in the morning and get him dressed and take him in, and he starts sexually harassing her? He was the founding member of the Black Caucus, so he gets a pass. And all this stuff about people coming out and saying, well, he paid the money out of his staff allowance. It's still taxpayer money. Still taxpayer money that is there. Let's hear what President Trump had to say. It's video clip 5, guys. Let's hear what he had to say when he was asked, getting on the helicopter yesterday, if we should know who these people are that have had sexual harassment claims paid for by the taxpayer? Should we even be allowed to know who these people are? Here's what President Trump had to say.
Mr. President, do you believe Congress should release the names of lawmakers who have settled on sexual harassment claims?
I do. I really do. I think they should. Thank you.
Okay, so he just agreed with him. He said, yeah, we should know. And of course we should. Of course we should. He could have said more, but he was getting on the helicopter, and he had already made several comments about Roy Moore. They're going to play for you coming up. But then we have Charlie Rose. Charlie Rose. This is a tough week for the left. I mean, first you got the icon, John Conyers, and now you got Charlie Moore. It's so sad for them, because for the left, it must be like finding out that Walter Cronkite was a cross-dresser and playing with J. Edgar Hoover. What we're seeing from Charlie Rose. Now, the total number of women who have come forward, 3 more, and this brings the total number of accusers to 16, just hours after, within the last 24 hours this has come out. And of course, they're all saying, who knew? We had no idea that he was doing this. 16 women come forward and saying this guy is walking around without any clothes and making advances to us. And of course, the people who worked very closely with him, his co-hosts, are like, we had no idea. It's so disturbing to find this out. You didn't have any idea? This is a pretty broadly based behavior when 16 women come forward and say, yeah, he's walking around without any clothes on in our presence and making overtures to us. That's the phoniness of the left. That's the phoniness of the media, the politicized media. And then there's this story from the Daily Mail about Charlie Rose. Yeah, nobody knew, did they? Except back in 2001, there was a movie called The Royal Tenenbaums. And they had a character there that was alluded to be Charlie Rose. He was a TV host, and everybody realized that that was supposed to be Charlie Rose. And in the movie, they have this Charlie Rose host groping Gwyneth Paltrow's breasts. So they didn't know. It's kind of like the stuff that you see with the cartoons, saying, help, I've just escaped from Kevin Spacey's basement. Or all these people making jokes about Harvey Weinstein. Well, they knew about Charlie Rose, too. And they can pretend when they go on the late-night talk shows with Stephen Colbert and others who will help them along in this pretense, in this charade, will help them along to say, well, they had no idea about Charlie Rose. Yeah, okay, stay with us. We'll be right back. And I'm going to tell you where this is leading.